All right, so we got some other people joining us. Um, yeah, like, and this is just super free fall. Like usually, and I put the stuff in the calendar as we discussed. Our community is a bunch of marketers, bunch of heathens. No, I'm kidding. It's just kind of like a fireside chat type of deal. Like we just want to be able to kind of ask you questions, and especially because right now everyone is in Zoom. And I was like, oh, this is really fascinating. We have a bunch of people hiring account managers, and communication being done in Zoom with not only the team but the client side.
Yeah.
And I found myself, I think it was at the beginning of like last quarter, because I'm QAing calls for our success champions, and I was like, where is gallery view? Why are you not viewing things in gallery view? And a couple of things came up for me. I was like, I can't see other people's expression, so I don't know like what engagement looks like or how people are communicating and things like that. And I was like, oh, and I didn't even knew that I was doing this because I've been on Zoom for, I don't know, 6 years
Yeah.
now. And I was like, that's really interesting. And then the other thing was people's expression of being able to see other people's nonverbal things is sometimes scary. And I never even thought about this because I guess, I don't know, like never even crossed my mind. And I was like, oh my God, it'd be so great to do something with you on nonverbal communication, because so much of our day-to-day now in like the digital space has to do with nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I'm so
it's
excited
been
that
a
you're here.
it's been a weird transition for a lot of like companies and organizations over the past year and a half. I mean, companies were making it, and then a lot of companies that were doing sort of a hybrid in person, occasional Zoom meeting became 100% or 120% Zoom meeting. So I've seen all the struggles. I've watched people. My weirdest one was watching someone fire 150 people on Zoom.
Wow. Okay. So we're gonna
Yeah,
talk
that
about that.
was interesting. And coaching
That
them
is
through that,
crazy.
and making it, and it was like 150 people that were like family. It wasn't like just like a
Oh,
quick hire. We didn't do it all 150 at once. Obviously, it was broken down, but like, yeah, it was a tough week.
yeah. How many? Okay, because now I'm just like curious, right? Like I'm like, you opened the loop, Pandora's box. How many people did they fire one at a time, or were they done in batches?
Yeah, they did like, I mean, they got it the whole company. They did the senior leader, like the senior leadership was on the call where I was talking about fire. So like I coached every person to like go through a process for essentially letting their team go. And this was a little bit easier because the company was essentially closing.
Mm,
They couldn't survive COVID. They knew they would be going bankrupt. So it
hmm.
wasn't like, hey, we're letting you go because of XYZ. It's like, we don't have a job either. So it was easy, but like it's just sort of managing the effect of that on Zoom is beyond a lot of leader skill sets.
Mm,
So basically, our big thing here is like what I've been working a lot on is there's a major gap between theory and application when it comes to communication advice, right? So like you can go
hmm.
out and read or buy any leadership book or business book, and they might have like I can give you 6 frameworks for giving feedback. They're incredibly solid that all work.
Hmm.
But if your sort of facial reactivity, your ability to process the behavior in front of you, your tonality isn't in alignment with your message, like it all doesn't work. So we see a lot of training that focuses on bigger picture theory, and it sounds like really good, right? Like you want to be inspiring and you want to be bold and you want to be a coaching leadership style, and then you see the person and like, listen, I think that you should really focus on like, and that's creating a lot of issues in organizations. But a lot of the stuff on Zoom is just standard communication stuff that doesn't get addressed. So like, for example, one of you might be, I don't know, you might be, I'll give you the best example. So we do these Zoom evaluations where we, like right now, I'm working with the CEO of a very big company who got basically, they love him, but he's an asshole. So like the 360s, not love him, I'm sorry, he's highly effective and they respect him, but he's an asshole. So his
Oh, the
360
overachieving
evaluation,
asshole. That's what I call it.
he's just he's a piece of work, and he doesn't necessarily mean it, but I randomly sample all of his Zoom meetings to find inconsistencies in the Zoom meetings and so on and so forth. So like the whole joke is he keeps starting off every Zoom meeting with the weather. So it's like, yeah, guys, like, how's the weather out there in Tennessee? And they're like, it's okay. Every Zoom meeting, that's like his thing. So he goes from like a 5-second weather introduction immediately to like, all right, let's go over the KPIs and see what's working, what's not working. And he just doesn't have the technical skills to sort of establish that level of rapport. And sometimes it's that, and other times it's you have a deadline and you're on a Zoom meeting and you're typing notes, and the other people are kind of like, I don't feel like, Alex ever listens to me. He's always like doing something else. You don't vocalize that, but you develop a little bit of a resentment against Alex. And then Alex says something and you're like, fuck this Alex guy. Like, I don't like, that's really what starts to happen in people's heads. And it's the reality of communication. And it all started with just some sort of silly inconsistency. So like, we're really big about upfront giving the context. So for example, there was this woman, this is really interesting. There's this woman, one of the nicest people ever this year, just so nice. But when we did this evaluation thing, like everybody was saying she was dismissive and rude. And I was like, there's something going on here, because this woman is like, I don't, so the whole thing with reading nonverbal behavior is like, I don't look at you and read anything. Like, I don't be like, oh my God, like you're, deep, dark secrets or whatever. Where reality is I look at you through the lens of how other people are going to perceive your behavior. So like if you're a manager and you're coming across a certain way, I can make certain assumptions about themes and connections and specific facial actions and tonality that I know that are going to cause issues. This woman had none of that. She was just great. She was friendly, like authentic, open, like maybe a couple little things I could have called out, but she was great. But anyways, so I started observing the meetings, and in the meetings, she was like this most of the time. Like looking off in another direction and like and everybody's like engaged and so on and so forth. And what happened was that manager, she works for that team, but she's also like responsible to another person. And that other person was like, I want very detailed notes about these meetings. So her job in the meetings was to take very detailed notes, but everybody in the group was like, every time she's on a call, she's not even listening to what we're having to say. And like, we had a meeting about it and everybody laughed and it was a joke and so on and so forth. But those little type of things, I'm telling you, I've worked in organizations for a long time. They ruin companies. So founders break up and crazy HR stuff happens, all because of your inability to communicate in a way that is congruent. And that's really what you want to solve for, is making sure your message is heard in the way that you want it to be heard. And Zoom could make that, a lot more challenging. I'd much rather be in person with you guys right now. And it's a much better communication medium than phone, I'll tell you that much, but there's still a lot that gets missed when you're running meetings and running groups on Zoom.
Absolutely. And like just a little bit of your background. I know I put it in the bio, but it's always good to kind of hear it from the horse's mouth. If you can just talk to us a little bit about like, kind of, you have this research arm, and then you are also working with like poker players and application. And then because a lot of us here are, a lot of people here are marketers, you're also doing, 6 figures like launches. I'm like undercover marketer, even though that's not how you describe yourself. So I'd love for you to just kind of give a little bit of a 1-minute intro just to build the context. Even though it is in the calendar invite and everybody knows.
Real quick story. Long story short, my sort of entire life revolves around like poker, nonverbal behavior, and psychology. I was an adjunct professor at SUNY University of New York for 7 years. I started 2 companies. One was School of Cards, the other was Nonverbal Groups. School of Cards was a live poker school on 28th and 10th, and Nonverbal Group was basically my behavioral research company. We do large scale studies on human behavior. So our largest one was on poker players. So we basically had players come in, record them from multiple angles, and spent 7 years breaking down every single thing. Like we did things like marked every single time someone blinked, and created a database of over 500,000 blinks, and then charted and graphed and showed how blink rate could be correlated with hand strength. But like, so that was, I was doing, long story short, I was consulting with NonVerbal Group, and we're flying, and I had this moment where I was in Portugal with my fiance now, and I was like I shouldn't be doing this. Like I'm flying everywhere, like my time is wasted. So I started getting into the online product game, but I was a little bit too much of a I don't want to use the word perfectionist, but like I really wanted to, I had mental game stuff around wanting to create a really great product. So Beyond Tells was supposed to take 3 months. It took 7 years. But basically I have a lot of various skills, but I'm specifically the world's expert in teaching the highest level poker players how to read the behavior of the other highest level poker players. So I work with the world's best poker players on teaching this skill set at a very specific level. And sort of what we found with communication is the big problem is context. Is that like, just because like how I teach players to read behavior at a poker table is completely different how I teach organizational behavior, and versus how it would be different from a date versus a standard conversation. And that's missing from a lot. Like people don't absorb the context. And then in that process, built a 7-figure business with online courses, marketing, launches, all of that stuff. And now built a team around my poker side of the company that's like streamlined. And now I'm back to a NonVerbal Group pretty much full time. So doing a lot of like pretty high level executive leadership coaching, in addition to building a new pretty crazy course called the Social Edge, which essentially is a 14-week social skills class, but you go through it through a cohort, and it's all on Zoom, and we like analyze your behavior and your interactions between people. So that's been like what I've been doing. But just, yeah, a lot of, I was a very hands-on CEO to my detriment. So a lot of struggle and stuff as I started, because I wanted to go deep down every vertical. But now it's kind of, you get to see the bigger picture of things, which is quite rewarding. But yeah, it's tough. Like the launches, I've been through if you've been through launches, I've been through every single phase of that. Like from thinking things are gonna, oh my God, this is gonna change my life, to like, oh wow, that didn't work, to like, yeah, it's an interesting world.
I love that. And I have a couple questions, just so I can get my systems geekiness out. And then
Mhm.
I'll open it up to the group. Um, so one question that I'm always asking everybody is like, what are you using in terms of technology to manage your businesses, plural? So like
Okay.
project management, CRM, automation tools, just like quick, like your top 5 things in your tech stack, just because everyone's always curious to know what people are using.
So first and foremost, Asana is probably number 1 on top. So Asana, Notion, Google Drive, Slack, and Zoom represents like 99% of our communication. If it's project based, or it has, so one of the big shifts we made conversationally is we used to have a lot of discussion about things in Slack. That's no longer happening. All discussion happens in Asana. So Slack is more of just like a catch up sort of tool, or so on and so forth. And yeah, I mean, that's like, listen, I spent a good portion of my, as a sort of beginning entrepreneur, like being so obsessed with tools, and so obsessed with like trying to find the tools and so on and so forth, and really wasting a lot of money like that. So now I'm at this place where like, when like I'll evaluate our systems, and if there's a problem that's like enough of a pain point, it's like, okay, we need to reevaluate the tools. But I just think that like Asana, Notion, Google Drive, like they're just so good, and they integrate so well that like there's nothing I can't do with those tools as far as collaboration. We use Intercom as a CRM also, which is probably stupid, a little bit expensive, but it works for us. We enjoy it. And then what else? That's it really. Figma, a
Okay.
lot of Figma too.
All right, cool. And how do you have visibility to people's performance now with the multiple teams that you've got going on for the 2 businesses?
I don't think we really do have a good, so one of the things that the people that have worked with me for 7 to 8, like longer, 8+ years. So there's this inherent like flow and trust. And really, I am not running the School of Cards business. Like I got to this place where like School of Cards making money, it's minimal amount of time. I like it. I am not going like super crazy with the systems and stuff with that. I'm sort of doing it for the nonverbal group because that's going to be a much bigger organization. Also, we have an accordion model. So instead of having a big team, like our team could expand and then contract. So we use a lot of Upwork. Oh, and the thing I forgot is Loom. I use Loom more than anything else. So most of my like directional stuff is like, I make a video on Loom, I tell someone to do it, and that turns into some sort of process down the road. But for me as a manager, when it comes to like process and stuff like that, my weakness is I can get too much into process. And as a result, the process never actually happens. So like if Blake has to do the process, it has like a decision tree and there's like a discussion and there's like all this stuff. So I've realized the best way to build process in my company is for me never to do it. So I have Zuli, who's like my COO who handles the bulk of that. But like, listen, there's always room for improvement in that area. And I'm always looking for that kind of edge.
Cool. And thank you for sharing all that. As we scale communication, right? And we're thinking about communication both from a verbal and nonverbal standpoint, right? And I know you've had clients who are small clients, medium-sized clients, and I say this because a lot of people, especially in the marketing world, are always trying to kind of go upstream. Oh, we want that hot, new, sexy client, right? We want the logos, we want this. And I know right now, I don't know if you can speak to it at all, or maybe like in generalizations, you've got a super hot, sexy client, right? And so as you're scaling your communication, how do you see communication change or develop as people go into higher tiers of revenue?
That's a good question. So as people's companies move from higher tiers, or you start working with bigger and bigger clients?
I guess both, right? Because it's two angles.
So this is interesting. So for me, it stays the same for communicating with clients. So I have this thing so I developed a reputation specifically in finance in New York for dealing with really tough individuals. So like somebody who runs a hedge fund and is making everyone around them miserable. And they would send me in and I would deal with it. And the way I dealt with it was like, I've had several people tell me that I'm the only person in their life that talks to them like that. Like not my kids, not my wife, not my family. And when I mean talk to like that, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like that's the tonality. And what I've learned is that the most sort of effective style of communication for myself is just when I'm myself. So like one of my biggest pitches ever was a Fortune 50 company. I get invited. It's like they do these pitches where you're sitting in, it's almost like a U-shaped table and you stand in front and you literally talk for 2 minutes and then they decide whether or not they could potentially use you as a vendor. And in the middle of my conversation, the CEO like checked his phone and I had this moment and I started off very formal, like my name is Blake Eastman, I look up a nonverbal group, blah, blah, blah. And then he checks his phone and I'm like, all right, either do this or you don't do that. Like there was like a split second decision in my head and I was kind of like, screw it. I was like, this is exactly the problem. And he looks up and I was like, listen, he's tried to cut me off. And I was like, no. Like you're interviewing vendors and people to improve communication in your company, but you don't really care. All of your companies don't really care. You say you care, but because you're showing the behavior that you don't care. And I did this whole thing and he was like, I'm sorry, put down the phone. And they were like, I've never seen anybody do that. And that company sent me, I don't know, like it powered between 2017 to 2019 just because of that one thing. So I find for what I do, that works for me. That is not going to work for everybody else, right? So, and this is what I'm big about is like finding whatever your communication style with your best friend is probably going to be the most effective version of yourself. So people really get screwed up when they try to be a certain way that they're not. So you pitch in front of a big client and you're like, okay, so hi, my name is Blake Eastman. I own a company called This Is Not Me. And people could, there's mechanisms at play, evolutionary mechanisms that can spot that, like something's wrong about this guy. or I don't trust this guy, or I don't, whatever. And most of my high level sales coaching and all that stuff is just getting people first to what they're most comfortable with, and then building slight skill sets on top of that. It's a joke. It's kind of like people think you need to learn stuff to be the most effective. You really need to unlearn stuff. But that's the sort of pitch style. As far as the written communication and flow and process, you got to speak the language of the bigger people, right? Like, so in bigger organizations, like, so for example, like if I work with a small company and they like, all right, we want you to come in and do this quick, like half-day team building thing, right? It's basically going to be like a one-page proposal. I send them an invoice on PayPal and it's done, right? Like it's a simple thing. Here's a schedule. You work in a big organization, it's a hell of a lot different. It's a 3-page proposal. It's a back and forth conversation with legal usually. It's getting on their vendor list and filling out like W-9s. It's all this stuff that you sort of like need to know. And I know how to speak that language because the initial proposal is like 3-page long and it looks beautiful. And then right after they agree to engage, I say, okay, great, here's my W-9. How would you like me to invoice you? There's a flow and process that if you don't get, they usually know like you don't get it either. So so one of my favorite stories is this is so great. So like I had a client I did a thing with, and I like took a contract off the internet. I was like, contract for services or whatever. So I took a contract off the internet. I sent it to them and they're like, hey, our legal team has some problems with this. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, just tell them to amend it however the hell they want and I'll sign it. That's basically, I didn't say it like that. That's what I said. So they amend it. And when they amend it, they started putting things in. So they were like, we will not spend more than $400 on taxis. We will not spend more than $300 per night on meals. I didn't want them to pay for all that stuff. So they basically added another $5,000 in the document. And I was like, interesting. So this is how a lot of corporations operate. And I took that template, modified it, and that became my contract. So like, but yeah, knowing the language and knowing the norms and sort of how a group speaks and what they struggle with is the key to piercing higher level contracts, essentially.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna open this up to the group. You guys know the drill. Unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question. If there's 2 of you, only the strong. No, I'm kidding. I'll pick one of you. You can ask a question. The other person will go next. Jan, start us off. We can't hear you.
How's that? Is that better?
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, I've got 2 mutes. So I have gotten an experience that I am really bad at interviewing. That people will say yes.
Being interviewed or interviewing someone else?
Interviewing someone else. And what I'm bad at is filtering them out. Like I will hire people who really aren't up to the job because they say they're up to the job and they get excited and say the right things and they're actually totally not up to the job. Tyler is laughing at me. So is there a way that do you have any tips or tricks for how to know that someone is maybe not lying to you, but maybe not confident? Yeah, is that you've got it like.
Well, it really depends on the construct of like what you're looking for, right? So like if you hire somebody in a role where persuasion and certain elements are going to be really important, you kind of want them to be able to have that skill set, right? Versus if you're hiring someone who's, listen, so in the grand scheme of processing and reading behavior, identifying deception is the hardest thing by far. So most of what you read in books like how to spot lie, it's just complete bullshit. That's the honest to God truth, okay? Like it's based on academic research that has like N of 5 and it's not real and it's not applicable. And you get these people that like worked at the CIA for 20 years and they think that physiological arousal at the CIA when you're interviewing someone is going to be the same in your it's not. It's complete nonsense. And what the reality is deception or identifying that is a mixture of interrogation is really what the mindset you have to be in. So like one of the most effective interrogation tools that I've probably used in the past is like I'll throw out things that are not real and see how people latch onto them. So I did this a little bit with the research assistant. I said, yeah, did you read that like 1947 study that was originally conducted by blah. Oh yeah. Like I know this, and I'm like, oh, I didn't made it up. Didn't exist, right? Just
Ooh,
and now that doesn't
great.
that doesn't mean but there's an important distinction here. That doesn't mean the person is bad or wrong or anything like that, because people feel the fundamental need to be approved and so on and so forth. It just means that they might need validation more. They might be somebody that's motivated with validation, that needs to feel part of the group, so on and so forth. And that might not be right for that role. I might want someone to tell me, for me, I need very powerful people around me. It's just kind of how I function, to shift me in the right directions. And like that would be a failure of being able to execute that. But really what I would do is, do you have like a hiring process or like a checklist or things like that?
We do, and we're going through kind of questions, and we're getting the rest of the team to do it better. But they've literally taken me out of it because I will say yes when people suck. So
I mean, listen, I'm the victim of it. I'm the same way. Like I'm very like, let's give them a shot, and then like X amount of months later or whatever, I'm like, oh, that doesn't work. Also, so what's really worked for hiring is you'll find for like if you're making a full-time hire, you'll find like most states, specifically California, like first 90 days you can pretty much fire for whatever reason. It's not so strict. After you get out of that 90-day period, things can happen, specifically in California, but in other states as well. But like, so what I am very big on is like hire, assess, and then immediate roadmap for training within the first 30, 60, and 90 days. And having a real clear managed expectation of this is what I expect from you, this is what you can expect from me, and we're going to review it over the course of 90 days. And letting people know that like you're not just hired for life. Like this 90-day period is that has worked really well for a lot of organizations that have struggled, especially with specific hires and things like that. So I think with that, applying a more straightforward thing like that is the most helpful. And then also, last but not least, record yourself interviewing someone, and then later have your team like discuss what you might have missed, right? So like record the Zoom, like, oh wow, like she said X, Y, and Z, and you didn't even follow up on that, or like there was a discrepancy in her resume and you didn't say anything, like that kind of thing.
I love the saying it wrong. So the managed expectations, I am pretty straightforward in how I give feedback as the CEO, as Tyler's blinking to acknowledge. But the team as a whole isn't. They're really way too soft and not clear enough to get people to realize they actually need to make a change in what they're doing. Do you have any?
And you mean too soft, like they can't like get to the point?
Like wouldn't it be nice if you showed up on time, and it's wouldn't it be great if you wore something other than a t-shirt on Zoom meetings, or the things that are actually not negotiable are presented as, it would be really great if you could do this thing. And it's
like the language
thing.
the language it would be great is sort of like, I like to call it cop-out language, right? Like it's not it would be great, like listen, you can't ever come on another Zoom call in a t-shirt. We speak with clients who you just can't. And really the big thing when you're communicating these kind of rules, never communicate rules, communicate the rules and then the context for the rules. So if you tell someone don't wear a t-shirt, they're going to be like, screw you, I'm going to wear whatever the hell I want. Or like, there might be that little bit of a hesitation. If you say, listen, like one of the things that happens is when you get on these calls with a t-shirt, it's not what the client's used to. They're used to seeing people in suits for the most part. And we want to maintain a standard at this company where, we're perceived a certain X, Y, or Z way. And that's why I'm asking you to do it. So could you please do me a favor in the future? Just make sure you're not wearing t-shirts. And most people fail on the context, right? They just throw out things without giving the actual contextual reasons why. There's some like classic psychology studies where there's like this, it's not the best study, but it's used over and over again with this like Xerox copying machine thing where like people cut a line in a Xerox copy and they basically 3 different ways they ask to cut the line. And the one with the most context always has the highest level of agreeability. So you'll find that in life as well.
Alex.
Isn't it even if the context is unrelated? Even if it's just a reason.
That's why I said the study's bad, because I thought that like giving a context, like the exact language is like I'm in a rush, can I skip you? Versus like, I'm in a rush, I'm gonna miss my flight if I don't get this just copy, can I please skip you? That's gonna have like 99.9% acceptability. Yeah, no, good call out.
Alex, you had a question.
Cool. Yeah, I had a question, and Jan, I just shared a small snippet from a podcast where Mark Lohr, who's the founder of Jet.com, was being interviewed, and he talked a little bit about his process for hiring people and how he sucked at it. And his kind of thing was like the way that he reviews people's resumes that like cuts people out so that he's not like swayed by people's charm on a call, and he overlooks all the red flags. So I found it pretty interesting as well, because
Cool.
I'm definitely someone who's charmed easily, and I'm like, oh, they sound amazing, and then the reality comes in. Blake, this is super fascinating. This is like I'm just everything you're saying, I'm just eating it all up. I love it.
Cool.
My question is, you were talking about the executive that you worked with who like gets on the Zoom call, says how's the weather, and then is like boom into it. What are your like recommendations for when you're, I guess there's two kind of scenarios I'm thinking of. One is like there's a team update, you get the whole team on, and suddenly there's like 8 people, and it's like you want to have small talk with everyone to like get people settled in, but it's like I can't ask each person how they're doing, and there's no like, you can't communicate, like people can't pair off. So there's like, how do we just get into a friendly vibe with an internal team meeting? My other question is like, what are the most effective methods you've seen on Zoom calls when you're meeting a new client for the first time, just to like build rapport instantly, if that's at all different from meeting someone in person?
Yeah. All right. So I'm a big fan of there's definitely no one style of leadership. And I've seen this through all my work. And so for me, I mean, the way that I lead and the way that people know me is literally, it might be 10 minutes and somebody from my team might say, all right, guys, like we only have 45 minutes in this meeting. We got to get back to it because I'm more interested in my team's lives than making money. It's just how I am. So I have to put systems in place to prevent me from that and have other people run the meeting so that doesn't essentially happen. This is the trick. You have to really care. Okay, like that's the trick. So a lot of people will say like, bring up something or bring up what happened this weekend, or you have to actually care. So if you don't care, don't bring it up. And what you could say is just, it's all context, right? So behavior, like our whole model for sort of processing behavior is like behavior, context, why. All behavior is surrounded by a context, and people are always coming up with reasons why that behavior is occurring. So what you can say is like, listen, guys, I want to speak to you guys. I want to meet everybody. I want to engage, but these meetings, we want to meet quick. We want to get them quicker. So if you understand, we're just going to jump right into it so we can save time. They shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. On Fridays, let's all catch up together and have like a back and forth type of dynamic, right? Like it's just setting the construct for what you want it to be. And that is the coolest and hardest thing about leadership and running a company, is it's your choice, right? So I could never personally own a company where it would be like, all right, everybody's scorecards are up. Where we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not me. Like it would feel so weird. So I usually start off with some sort of self-disclosure about like what's going on. So everybody in my team knows that I'm training for these. I'm doing like a 30-mile, 60 obstacle course race in the mountains in October. And like, I'll be like, yesterday was crazy, and I'll like discuss it. And then it opens up, everybody talks. But that's because I have a very connected relationship with everybody that I work with. So like, my point is, it needs to really matter. So even if you said, listen, let's get down to business, let's get this done, that matters. So saying that is better than going like, so how was your weekend? Yeah, good. Right. Okay. So let's get started. That's the stuff that people don't like or respect, because then at the end of the day, it just feels fake. It feels inauthentic. It feels phony. What was the other question? I had an answer for that too.
The other question was like, I mean, maybe the answer is going to be the same, but it was like quick rapport building when you've got a new client on a Zoom call.
Oh, that's not the same. Okay, so everything I do, I think of when we talk about communication from the purpose of optimization, we think about a bell curve distribution, right? So if you have a bell curve, I tend to believe that perception falls into a bell curve also. So if you have a client, the client is going to get on a call they're going to understand what an average sales call looks like and what a not average sales call looks like, just of a facet of repetitions. So the more Zoom calls they have, the more people fall into distribution. The really bad Zoom calls are below on the left side of the bell curve. The really Zoom good ones are on the right side of the bell curve. I'm always trying to do stuff far on the right side of the bell curve, meaning I'm not ever starting a call like anybody else is starting a call on Zoom. It's not happening. I'll dive right into it. I'll do something different so I stand out in a way. And it's optimizing for that. So, most agencies will start off with some sort of like bullshit chatter or something like that, where it's like, hey, so where are you? Oh, you're in Vegas. Oh my God, that's so cool. Like, what's it like living in Vegas? It's nice. You don't think I've heard people asking what it's like living in Vegas right now? You don't think I've learned how I've been handling the pandemic? That's the same question that's asked to me every single second. So it's like, how do you do something that's dramatically different from what everybody else is doing? And that's not easy, but once you do it, it becomes effective because you're just different. And sometimes, listen, the bigger answer is just being able to read the person. Like if I speak to somebody in New York, I can probably get away with like, listen, like I don't want to waste your time here. I know you have a lot of these calls, so real quick, 10 minutes. Let's see if we're a good fit. I'm going to go through this. You send me this, blah, 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 and you go through it. You can't do that in the Midwest. They won't hire you. They won't. It has to be, hey, so how are you? Oh, so thank you so much for doing this. Da, 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 da. I know, because I've screwed that up a couple of times. I cursed once in a presentation. I literally, you would have thought I decapitated somebody on stage with the reactions of the people in the room. And it was a Midwestern company. And I was like, oh, and I said it. I said, wow, you guys really don't like when I curse. And they all got like, I was like, listen, I'll make you a promise that I'll try as best as I can not to curse. That's all I can give, because I'm from New York, and they all laughed and we fixed it. But like, yeah, I mean, it depends on the context and who you're sort of dealing with. And the better you understand the context of the person, the better you can craft a communication style or an approach that's, different.
I don't want to take everyone's time. Is there one example you have of something that you've done that's been far on the right side of that bell curve?
Yeah, really far. So there is a flow in process in private equity presentations that we basically sat through a bunch of private equity presentations and got the standard. Usually what happens is everybody has these like these robust folders that have all company information, and they're put on the table. It's just like the standard way of doing things. And all the folders sit on the table, and then there's a 30-minute presentation, and then there's question and answers. We created something where it's like, listen, we're not going to do the whole folder and presentation thing. Like, first, we just want to give you an overview of exactly what this company is about, X, Y, and Z. And then after that, we'll send you all the documentation. And I crafted it like that, and it crushed because people didn't, this is what would happen. I found that most people would be sitting there and being like, for 30 minutes. And it was just a standard way of business. So then all of a sudden they're like, wow, this company's a little bit different. And people don't even realize those things. It just kind of like happens.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Dennis, you had a question.
I do. Yeah, it's so interesting, this conversation. I'm learning a ton here, but I certainly want to know if there's like a process or a formula that you can share to communicate, hard conversations effectively. If there's anything that you can, share.
So this is like, the reason why it's hard is this is kind of my whole mission in my company, is that like, yeah, of course there are some structures, but really it revolves around your ability to handle the dynamic, which takes a lot more training and a lot more understanding. So like the way to solve for this is video training, not books. So books are horrible mediums sometimes for realizations and understanding and information. They're incredible. There's no better source. But for actually, you can't like learn to read behavior from a book, right? So my best piece of advice to you, do you have to have a lot of hard conversations?
Oh, not generally, but always want to be prepared.
All right, so if you always want to be prepared for a hard conversation, the first way to start off is take out a pen and paper and start writing out the emotions, thoughts, and experiences that the other person is likely to encounter. So there's there's this concept, empathy, right? Everybody knows empathy. Empathy gets such a good, oh, you have to have empathy. Empathy is pretty, in my opinion, like not effective. Like cognitive empathy is more effective. So there's emotional empathy, which is the ability to sort of empathize with someone. And there's cognitive empathy, which is the reason to understand why someone's experiencing a specific emotion. Most people don't have a robust understanding of cognitive empathy, so they don't understand what somebody else can go through. So the best way to hedge it is to be like, all right, like, what do? They're frustrated. They worked 3 months on this project and they're getting fired. They're this, they're that, they're this, they're that, so that you're prepped with what potentially is going to be the outcome of your communication. That's like the first step. And then the other step is like training facial feedback and making sure you're congruent and a bunch of other things. But start there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very cool. Rebecca.
Hi, Blake.
Hey.
I have an aesthetic question for you. Your background looks like it's like blurred out. Are you using a filter or what are you using?
No, I'm actually using just like a expensive camera.
Okay.
Like it's not anything like, so I have this literally happened last week. Like I have this crazy setup that I use for film and I'm like, why am I not using it for Zoom calls? So I set it up. For presentations, ironically, the more important thing is sound. Sound is more important. Normally I'd be using like, this is like a studio mic that would come through. You're going to get away with being way more assertive, all those things, if you increase sound. And then with video, listen, like you are in the area of perception and the area of like, people do make certain judgments based on your background. Like that's going to happen. Like there's no way it's not. I had a client, the CFO of a very, 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 very large company, who every single Zoom meeting for the entire summer switched to a different Star Wars background, and he never repeated the same one, right? And it was kind of a facet of his character and who he is as a person, and so on and so forth, right? So like, it's just like with these two, Brian and Alex have a very like, it just reminds me of like a New York City agency style type office, right? It's like narrow, it's like the way it is. So, that lends itself with something. Some of you are home, you're in your home, like, and it really is about cultivating or shifting the dynamic that works for you. But yeah, there was no sort of bigger picture thing for here. I mean, this is for part of my set. So I teach tools, like communication tools. So I have tool kits. No one in a million years is going to get that. Then I've got like a Lego thing of New York City back there, but when it's depth of field, it just looks crisp. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
Thank
you
you.
could also teach a parenting class with like the rules with the context. I was like,
So there's a better person for that. Jennifer Cleary, I don't know how to spell her last name. Kal. She has something. Type in Google Jennifer Cleary and the calm effect. She's a Canadian developmental psych. I taught developmental psychology for a long time, and like, there's a lot of tricks and stuff. But like, I used to start my class off with saying, "Listen, guys, I'm gonna tell you what psychology says. I don't know if I'd want to like choke my kid if I had one. Like, I can't act like I'm gonna be the best parent. You know what I mean? Like, so there's also that's where another thing, big gap between theory and application, right? Like this is what you do. You get down at the kid's level, you understand their world, but when you're tired and you haven't slept and these kids won't shut up and you're in your head about this, like there's moments where people just kind of like lose it, and yeah, but Jennifer Cleary is great stuff. Check that out.
thank you.
All right, next question. You can go twice if you've already thought.
I've got a question. You caught my interest when you were kind of talking about the context and being able to read people and how you respond to them. And something that I'm always interested in is have you found any differences in the nonverbal communication between men and women? Or is it really the difference between like where you are in the country or how you're raised? Or is it all like, what have you found as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I mean, it's simply communication wise, probably like, I don't know, 10x harder being a woman than it is a male, for sure. In terms of like advocating a style or way somebody needs to show up, I feel like women are judged a lot more harshly than men. I feel like men, the common theme is assertion is rewarded, but for women, it's like be assertive, but balance it, but like I definitely think it's tough in that regard. I mean, I've worked with probably an equal number of women and men. I mean, I've worked with one woman in real estate that was called the Ice Queen, and she was just, she terrified everybody around her, and she was just very, that's the way she was. But yeah, there are major differences. And anybody who says there may not be that many differences, there's a major, the differences come from the gap in perception, not meaning. So I tend to feel that like men are going to perceive behavior, or the world's going to perceive women a lot more differently than they will perceive men, which requires certain contextual shifts, certain understanding. I wish it wasn't like that, but I really do believe it is. Like I can't give the same advice to some of my male clients that I can my female clients. But yeah, there's a difference.
Yeah, and when it comes to those nonverbal cues with women, when you are working with them, and just from my own perspective, I become a lot more, exactly what you said, a lot more apologetic, a lot more softer, a lot more maternal to get my point across. And I also feel that I may be harder to read. My meaning is harder to read because of that. So I don't know if there was some advice you could give when working with someone like that, how to open them up.
Yeah, so the number one thing with working with everybody, the thing I'm always developing is range. So there's never, so if you're really good at that, I don't need to work on that. Like if you're the kind of person that's going to be able to give a soft response and have a more motherly style of communication, how you describe, then you might need to work more on the assertion side. Because what's really powerful is when you have mother assertion, and then like that. So I'm always looking for where somebody's like competency is and where it isn't, and then developing that, because just basically the best communicators have range. So and like one of the things I'm actively fighting against always is like this notion of like people, you know, if they think that I'm an introvert or I'm extrovert or INFJ or I scored this on my Colby exam or both, like whatever it is, and they like really get into that, like that's who I am. And I'm like, well, that's a good basis for understanding like a little bit of your behavior, but we can develop a lot more. Like don't fall that you're limited. And I've seen people make incredibly dramatic shifts in how they communicate just by working on, you know, those opposite areas.
I could go on for this for an entire hour, but I'll let someone else ask a question.
That's
there's really
a lot
fascinating
of stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, guys. Like communication has been preached to be something that's like simple. Like, and this is not simple at all. Every single word that I am saying is going through some sort of filter. So I said guys 7 times in this presentation. I've been counting. The reason why is because I got in trouble a couple of weeks ago for saying guys. Someone's, you know, I could see it, and I messaged her. I was like, I'm sorry for saying guys. She's like, yep, that, you know, you're not using inclusive language, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm sorry. I'm used to talking to all guys because I do poker players, right? So I have a couple of women, but for the most part, it's been men. And literally for some people, when I use the term guys in that context, they immediately, I'm not credible now. I am not credible because I said guys, and their belief is that, you know, communication experts should know to have inclusivity with the trends and so on and so forth and blah, 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 blah. And that's their perspective, right? That's fine. That's their perspective. That's something that, you know, means a lot to them. To some of you, you're like, why would you care? Right? To some other people, they care even more. And this is that's just one little thing. This is happening nonstop everywhere, like in meetings and in different incentives and different reasons why. And that's why communication it's more about being able to understand what's happening in real time, as opposed to just like following these 3 or 4 rules to get everybody to love you as a leader kind of thing.
Yeah. If I could dovetail, as a female communicator, I actually find myself honing in more on my masculinity. I like with business across the board. So I don't know if that would help you, but I like make myself big, right? I like make myself like, you know, just yeah, I get like,
yeah. I mean, as long as your message is being perceived the way that you want it to be, so this is the whole thing. When somebody's authentic in themselves, I have nothing to say. Like, I'm just like, what do you want me to say? The only time I read stuff and really figure things out is when people are inauthentic. That's what I see. So when someone is really trying to be a certain way that they're not, and I'm like, you're overselling it. And then I say to them, like, do you feel like you're not heard in this organization? And that's why, and they're like, how do you know? Well, you kind of see it, right? You see the gap. So as long as it comes across in a way that's like authentic to you, and listen, I hate saying that term sometimes too, because like, it's just, what does that even mean, right? But like, you're not trying to be somebody else in that moment. And usually like 10% trying to be someone else sometimes is good for you. But once it goes to like 20 and 30%, you're going to probably lose your group or audience.
Like, you had said something earlier that I thought was really fascinating, right? A lot of what you do, like talking about this kind of getting people to their alignment, authentic, whatever word you want to use, right? And so what are the things that you most work with people, or that you most see that you have to deprogram, right? It's kind of like the shedding as opposed to the learning. Like, what are the most key things of unlearning behavior that you see as common trends?
Usually, I'm a strong believer that like a lot of it is a result of some sort of, I hate the word trauma, but it really is trauma. So something happens in high school. Like, for example, I had this one kid in my body language class who was just every second, like making jokes, like just making jokes. And I was like, everybody was laughing, but then you could start to see that people were starting to get annoyed, right? And I said to him in the middle of the class, I was like, well, why do you always feel the need to be funny? Like, what's this about? Blah, blah, blah. And he didn't answer it. And he's like, I don't know. And then he thought about it a little bit more. And when he was in high school, he was very overweight. So his way of integrating into interactions was to essentially always be funny and always say that remark and always be like that funny guy and so on and so forth. And I said to him, I said, listen, man, now, like, I get you had that self-concept, but now, like, you're a pretty good looking you just sound like an asshole. Like, you just come across like a tool all the time. And he didn't see. So usually what ends up happening is there's some sort of trauma or some sort of event. And then it's not like that event changes your life or whatever. What really happens is that event puts on some filters that starts to change. And that compounds day over day, month over month, week over week. And then 20 years later, you're a completely different person because of those events. So a lot of when I see like I'll have people that I'll tell them to look me in the eyes and they'll shake, like they'll tremble because of, and this particular person had the stuttering problem when he was younger and didn't want to look people in the eyes because they didn't want the reaction of that. So usually it starts in the area of trauma. And then I also do this process where like I get them comfortable with me and then I push their comfort zone and I make them like yell or scream or really like push the boundary of their communication. And then I show them the video of it and they go, oh, it doesn't look that bad. And then they see that when they're able to step out of their comfort zone, the feedback loop is sort of supported because they're like, oh, wow, I thought I would be, perceived a lot differently. I'm like, no, this is kind of like where you should be. But there's a lot of different methods. Some people, listen, that's what good coaching is. Some people, it's like, I had a special forces guy that was afraid of presentation training. And like in the middle of the class, I was like, listen, have you ever been shot at? And he was like, I've actually been shot. I was like, great. No one's shooting at you. Get up and do the goddamn presentation. And he laughed and that's what he needed. I have other people that like, I literally have to like take a completely different approach. Like, listen, it's so it's really like figuring out what the person needs and giving them that, as opposed to like, I'll show up different ways. Like there's different variations of it.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Tyler, you had a question?
Yeah. So I'm curious to that point though, I guess, you've talked about kind of approaching things in different contexts. You talked about kind of range of, kind of skills and approaches. And I guess, and maybe I'm missing it, but that with the authenticity of like, and maybe it's a lack of, kind of probably a whole hour on authenticity of what does that word mean, as you kind of said, but like how you kind of balance that range of, hey, if you're a passive communicator being assertive, well, is being assertive no longer being authentic to who you know what I mean? And like that balance?
No,
I
good
guess?
question. Really good question. So the way I like to think about it is this: the song is the same, but the volume is different. So still you, but there's a little bit more volume to it, right? Like, but so I'm not telling someone to sing a song that's not them, right? It's like, so yeah, and this stuff is subtle. It's not as easy to like explain. With videos, it's easier. Like I'll show you like what it looks like when like I'm doing this study called the social battery in September and October, where I bring people in and talk to them for 2 hours and really establish their full range and then coach them and so on and so forth. And like you could see like, oh wow, like yeah, when they're anxious, they're a completely different person. Or when they're preoccupied, and a lot of this is just understanding, you don't know what people are going through, guys. Like you just don't. I'll tell you one story that always stuck with me. When I was teaching at CUNY, this girl in my class fell asleep. So I don't care, but I just wanted to have some fun. So I took a textbook and like dropped it on the floor so she would wake up, and she like woke up, and I was like, listen, like if I don't mind if you don't come to class, just don't sleep in my class because it kind of like ruins the energy. All right, guys, I said to everyone. And then she comes up after the class and she's like, Professor, can I talk to you? I was like, don't worry about it. It's fine that you slept. Like, it's no problem. And she's like, no, I could use your advice. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, last night, my mother stabbed my sister 9 times in the chest. She's a paranoid schizophrenic, and she had an episode and stabbed my sister. And I was like, so you came to my class after your mother stabbed your sister? Like it was so, and I was like, it was just such a weird moment. I was like, listen, tell me all your professors, I'll take care of it. Do whatever you can. Don't worry about school. Everybody's going to allow for exceptions with this context. Like you don't worry, like just take care of your family, take care of what you need to take care of. And she's like, okay, thank you so much. I had this moment like, holy shit, you really just don't know what people are. I think this person's sleeping. And the reality is her mother's stabbing her sister. Like it's just, and I've seen so many instances of that. And I've worked with so many people that come across like assholes. And then you talk to them for 30 minutes and they're wonderful people that were told when they were younger that men don't smile at the workplace. And that's why they don't smile. And that's why they have a hard exterior. Like people are just people. And coming from that place allows you to be unaffected by people. So when someone, I work with like a tough CEO, that's like, are you even qualified? How old are you? You look 20. Like that's what they used to say to me when I was younger. I'd be like, okay. And I'd say like, is this what you do to everybody in your life? Is this like how you get what you want? Like, is this that strategy? And the reality is that most of the time, yes, most of the time people just feed into that and they accept it because they're in a role of power. So yeah, it's, if you can see past that, you can become very powerful because you don't take it personally. You're just like, all right, this person's being the way the person. That's it. People.
Oh, thank you, Blake. That's actually really good. We should put that in the show notes as like a perfect framework to use when people are big assholes. So you just gave us a script. Is there anything? I know you have tons of workshops and tons of stuff that you do. Is there anything that you can give us to do as almost like homework or like to practice being more effective with our nonverbal communication on camera and on Zoom?
Yeah, so if you want to be more on camera and on Zoom, the first thing you should do is like upgrade your audio. So like a more robust sounding audio is going to have a weird side effect. It's like when you go on stage, I always check when I did presentation coaching. I did this huge presentation thing at the United Nations. And somebody gave a speech at the United Nations and they used podiums. And I was like, is there any way you can get them to use a lav mic instead of and boost it? Because I knew that this person had a much softer register. But when they spoke on audio, it was like, boom. So like, Juliana, you don't need that because you have a more gumption to your voice, right? So it's like, but depending on where you are in that spectrum, you want to use like technology to compensate. But the best thing that you could really do is like have a Zoom call where you're like really excited or just engaged and interested in your perfect self with a friend and see what that communication looks like. And try to bring that towards what you look like in your day-to-day interactions with colleagues and with people. That's probably going to be the most helpful tip. And then you could also just for communication, play with what's your comfort zone. So if you're really uncomfortable, like being like a lot of energy or so on and so forth, try that and just see what that looks like. And usually with those two things combined, you can find kind of what works.
All right, very cool. And I know you have a program opening up. You said September. Is that open to the public or is it already closed?
In January.
In
I'll have
January?
something coming
Okay.
up. Yeah, and right now we're just doing a lot of consulting. But I guess I send a newsletter out every week, nonverbalgroup.com/newsletter. That's like the best way to sort of keep in touch. And I make random content and do studies and a bunch of other things.
All right, cool. And then when the program is up, let us know. I'll put it in the
Yeah.
Tinker Talk because all of our community gets our Tinker Talks, and then Anna will send you this Tinker Talk so you can have it as well and the others. We've had some pretty cool ones, and then that way, if people want to join the program, they have it there as well. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure that
And
we will
any
be
questions, just email me, blake@nonverbalgroup.com.
All right, very cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
This was
thank you, guys.
awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.